You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, another great week in Burleson, a big week in Burleson. We'll be talking about what's going on this coming Memorial Day weekend with the honey ride and all this at probably the middle of the show. But today we're going to talk a little bit of political philosophy, theory, practice, etc. at the state and national level. We have Don Kraus with the Ranked Choice Voting Group. What's the formal title of your group?
It's called Ranked Choice Voting for Texas.
Right.
And the website is rcvfortexas.org.
Okay. And we're going to talk about the benefits of ranked choice voting. I did some research on this, and it really has a lot of really good points that we ought to consider with these changes. And also Toni Wing-Jenkins is going to talk also about this, and also the Forward Party of Texas and what they're talking about. They're trying to provide an alternative to the duopoly we have that's been beating us down the last 15 years. Isn't that right? I can't tell you how many people I've talked to about national and state elections say, I don't like either one of them. You know, and so hopefully y'all are going to provide an alternative to that. But there are obstacles, as you well know. So we'll talk about those too. But anyway, before we jump into the deep end of the pool of all this, let's talk about the sponsors to make all this possible. Thank you, Daniel, CrossFit Burleson. You may not know this, but he just sold it to a couple of young ladies. They're going to be on the show in about 10 days. And so we'll talk about the new ownership of CrossFit Burleson. You know, do you know who they are?
Yes.
Do you know the new owners?
No, I just know CrossFit Burleson.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the same service and everything. It's going to be just the same as before, but so there's no, I don't know. We'll talk to them, these young ladies. Alexis Curtis is the owner's name, and we'll talk to them when we have an opportunity. I think it's like June 6th. I'm not quite sure. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I'm sure everything will be just the same. Good service, good programs, whatnot. Also, Shandy Stogsdill, she's the person to talk to if you're going to move in around this area. She's helping the Allard family with the real estate situation as well. So, and I'm very happy with what she's done. She's very knowledgeable, and I get all the information that she has. So it's a good person to deal with. Shandy Stogsdill will do you right. So give her a holler if you're looking to move around here. And also, of course, Otto at our place. I just came from there. Just saw Otto this morning. Have you ever been to our place?
No.
Oh, you have to go.
You have to
Really?
go. Yeah, no, he's also from Chicago as well. And so you'd have a lot to talk about. He's really into Chicago blues and whatnot. And Otto is a well-known figure around this area.
And don't be put off if there's a line, because it's so fast.
They move you.
They move you really quickly.
Yeah, they don't wait. You don't see some restaurants. You go in there and you see a lot of tables unbussed. That doesn't happen at our place.
No.
And so, but as far as today, it was about 65% full, and that's really, that's not. Usually it's fuller than that. So, but just Monday, I guess. But he really does a great job, and he does a good job for the community. Very community oriented as well. So
It's great when you can find a place that's doing that.
oh yeah, we do a lot of business there in a sense. I meet potential sponsors or my networking group there. Plus, he'd be a good place to have one of your meetings. It's a relaxing place to do business.
Great. Well, we have meetings all over the state, and we actually have house parties.
Well, you could maybe. There's a section of our place that can house or host, right? That's the word I want to say. Host a group of, say, 20, 25 people. So it's pretty good. Also, another place you can do this type of business is Wild Cigar and Culture. Are you a cigar smoker by any chance?
I'm not.
Well, it's a good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not just some smoke joint. It's a high end cigar place. You go in there, humidor, and it's if you're a cigar lover, it's like walking into the Vatican or something. It's all these really different types of cigars, and so they can help you tailor the experience you want. And they have tobacconists there. They're not just like some kids say they're over there.
My son enjoys an occasional good cigar. So
My dad
maybe
did.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So next time your son's around, that's a good place to do it. And you also have a bar, and you get a quality drink there. It's probably the nicest bar in town, and they have a place to do business. They have a conference room. So after y'all do your business, you can go ahead and have a drink or something. You might need one after.
Well, sometimes we do demonstrations where we go to a brewery or someplace, and we have people pick out their favorites and rank them, and then whichever one wins, everybody's got to drink it.
Well, I tell you what, Chris is politically knowledgeable. Let's put it that way. I mean, he's not so much like an activist, but he keeps up. I've told him I was doing this ranked choice voting. He said, "Oh, just like in Alaska," so he's aware of what's going on, and it's a really good thing. Also, we have Local Life magazine with Tiffany Nico. She's going to be out next week sometime. Yeah, it'll be about, usually it's almost always the first day of the month, but usually it's always the first week of the month at least. Maybe Memorial Day may backed it up a day or so, but it'll be out next week, and it goes to 30,000 homes, and it's very good, strong direct marketing, and she does local interest articles as well. I think in June she's doing Local Heroes, which last year Mary Slaney was on the cover. Do you know Mary Slaney?
Yes.
Everybody knows her.
Everybody knows her.
Yeah, and it was really a cute article about her. And this one is one of my particular favorites because my wife works here. Southern Gem, the jewelers on top of the third floor of the Windmiller, they are desperately trying to get downstairs. They're working on it right now. In fact, I was just visiting with them, and they're moving as quickly as they can. A lot of it was delayed by contractor issues and supplies and materials and blah blah blah. But they're going to be moving to a much bigger store very, very soon, probably within a week.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's very nice. And they got really nice jewelry, and they do a lot of repairs as well. So my wife has been working there since about October, I guess, and it's been a good deal. And we have this one, Verse 2 Detailing Services, Kayla Patino at 817-776-0478. And they'll come to your place, wash your car, detail your car. And so you don't have to go put it somewhere and get a ride home or whatnot, or wait for it overnight or something like that. You just make an appointment online at firstdodetailing.com, and you'll be good to go. He'll come to your place and do it. He did Gail's car last week, right at their where she works. So no problems at all. Keep going. We got a couple more. I've been really fortunate with the sponsors lately. I've been well supported, and I'm very appreciative of that because they're good people as well as good business people. It makes me feel good about promoting them. John Williams at Old Pro Roofing, 817-734-2756. Old Pro has been around in Burleson longer than I have, and they're near Old Town, and so they're well-established local business. And John is their local roofing specialist, and if you need to have your roof looked at because, a lot of people think, my roof's fine until it's not, and then you have a problem. And then you get water in there, and you get all these other problems going on. And so Old Pro Roofing with John Williams, 817-734-2756 will come out and take a look. Also, another person that's emphasizing the roof issues, if you will, Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, Melissa Harmon. She's my agent. She should be your agent. 682-804-0534. She'll save you some money and time if she can. Now, if you give her insurance and she can't save you money, she'll tell you. But Texas Farm Bureau has a sterling reputation with dealing with their clients, and I gave her mine. I wasn't unhappy with my insurance company at all. She said, "Let me look," and I said, "Sure, why not?" And she ends up upping my insurance for $50 less a month.
Wow!
So I got more coverage and savings at the same time. So there you are. And lastly, Stop Restoration. We had Lisa and Morris Smith on last Thursday, and all this kind of ties together. We talk about the roof, or we talk about Melissa Insurance. What they do is, if there's been damage, either through a storm, or if you have a leaky water faucet or leaky toilet or something like that, and it causes water damage, they're there to make it better. And they also do fire-related type of restorations. And they also talked about something I never thought about: unattended death. Sometimes that happens, and they get called in to take care of that. The environmental damage that causes. I didn't really think about it like that. But Lisa and Morris had a really good show, so check it out last Thursday. Whew, I made it. All right, we'll talk about the Honey Fest in about a half hour or so. Okay, Mr. Krause, when you were a young boy growing up in Illinois, this was your dream, right, to change the voting election?
I tell you was, actually.
Yeah, well, you told me before the show that you were kind of a policy wonk of sorts.
I was a political junkie from the time I can remember, but I never felt the need to get involved. Mm-hmm. And I just have been so fed up with all of the mudslinging and the negative ads, and I was searching for something that would work. And if I could leave your listeners with one point, is that because there's so much misinformation out there. The fact is, this is not just a good idea. It's an idea that works. It's worked over and over again everywhere it's been tried. Since 2004, there have been over 600 elections in the United States that have been done, and it's also used other places in the world for a long time. Australia has been using it for about 100 years.
Now, to people who are not familiar with ranked choice voting, why don't you describe it for us?
Sure. So ranked choice, that's totally understandable. Ranked choice voting, whenever I mention, we were just talking about it, people's eyes glaze over. And, it's not sexy talking about that, but it's fundamental. And basically, another term for it is you'll also hear it called instant runoff. Essentially, the way it works is just like our runoff elections work today, except it's faster. It's faster.
Yeah, and more probably
it's cheaper.
Yeah, I would say that efficient, economically efficient,
and it also represents better the will of the majority of people. And the way that it works, and I've got a little demonstration exercise to do, but basically what happens is instead of people voting for each person gets one vote. But instead of as it is today, they also get to give their preferences of who they would rather vote for. And as a result, they get a much better outcome. And I can go into what all the benefits are of it. But maybe the best thing to do is kind of do this little demonstration.
Sure.
And so the first thing I want to ask you then is, Brad, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Let me set the stage for you a little.
Okay.
We're going to have a party.
Okay.
And we're going to serve ice cream.
Okay.
And we have to decide which ice cream we're going to serve. Now, there's only two rules to this. One is you only get to have one flavor ice cream at the party. And then the second one is everybody at the party has to eat that flavor of ice cream. Okay. So what's your favorite flavor?
I'll go with chocolate. I'm pretty standard.
Okay. Well, that's great. And then what's your favorite flavor, Toni?
Rocky Road.
Rocky Road. Okay. Okay. And then my favorite is strawberry. Okay, so we've got our favorites there, and so we're going to have a little election here, and there's going to be 4 candidates. One is chocolate, one's Rocky Road, one's strawberry, and then there's manure.
Manure.
Yeah. It's an acquired taste.
Yes, I would say, yeah. Don't tell, Bluebell about it yet, though.
Okay. All right, I won't. Okay, so those are the 4 candidates, and of those 4 candidates, why don't you give me, Brand, your list in order of? Why don't you write down your list?
Write down my list
1,
in
2,
order.
3.
Okay.
So it's
1,
1,
2. Well, all right. 1. Actually, that's pretty much the road. I like Rocky Road better than Strawberry. I'm afraid.
All right. Okay.
Same here.
And then Toni, you want to put down yours?
Yes. Oh dear.
Putting you on the spot here.
So I do. Oh, I see. You didn't. Actually, I am the same there too.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to put down mine, and mine is I like
I did it wrong.
strawberry.
Yeah.
That's my favorite, and then I like chocolate, and I like Rocky Road, and manure comes in last for me too.
Oh, well, that's a good thing to hear. If you'd have chose that first, I thought you get very interesting taste. But
That's right.
I really don't like strawberry, and I considered it, but no.
All right,
Just
but
to
if
make
you
it.
had a choice, strawberry manure.
Probably rather
Yeah.
strawberry.
Okay, so let's count this out using the current system of first past the poll or plurality voting. The way it would be today is. Again, now there's a little surprise here. It's not just the 3 of us voting. There's a bunch of other people voting.
Right.
And what we come up with is chocolate comes up with 25% of the vote, and Rocky Road. I'm sorry,
I think you numbered.
Yeah, who had Rocky Road?
Toni didn't you?
I said Rocky Road.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so. Rocky Road had 23% of the vote, and Strawberry had 24% of the vote. And then there's this vocal minority. And they're a small minority, but they're vocal, and they just loved manure. So they got 28% of the vote. Okay, so under the current plurality system, we're all going to be eating manure at this party. Okay.
How nice.
All right. Well, let's try it a different way. Let's use ranked choice voting. Okay. So under ranked choice voting, looks like yours is Rocky Road, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Doesn't matter if it's yours or not. But the
Yeah,
point
right.
is
Yeah, I
Rocky
picked
Road.
Rocky. I like the
Right.
chocolate best.
Okay, Rocky Road came in last, so Rocky Road's going to get eliminated. So now we're going to, Toni, you get your second choice, and your second choice was chocolate, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now chocolate is your second choice, and so what happens now is Rocky Road gets eliminated, and then that 23% of the vote gets allocated to your second choice,
Which was chocolate.
which is chocolate. Okay, so that's 23%. Yeah, and let's assume all these other people kind of voted the same way. Okay, so that adds up to 48%, and strawberry's still in the running with 24%, and manure still got that 28%. So we still didn't get a majority winner there. So that means that the next one, strawberry, the bottom one here, gets eliminated. And then, well, whoever voted for strawberry gets their second choice, and their second choice is chocolate.
Chocolate. Okay.
What a shock, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens is then that the people who voted for strawberry got eliminated. They get their second choice. And so now we've got 72% for chocolate and 28% for manure.
That's a close one.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, here's what I read about ranked choice voting, and there's several things I read that were appealing to me. One is that if you're a candidate, you're just as much concerned about getting second place votes as first place votes, and so you're going to have to appeal to somebody other than just the hardcore base crowd.
Exactly. That's why you get better quality candidates running, because they're not being put through the meat grinder, because everybody's got to be positive, and because they're trying to get that second place vote. Absolutely.
Right, and that's what really got to me about some of the races we've had in the last decade and a half. It isn't just the Trump and Biden or the Trump and Clinton, even though those are, in my opinion, the two worst presidential elections we've ever had in terms of quality of candidates. Because I can't tell you how many people said, I'm just not going to vote because I don't like either one of them. And so if they had an option to that they felt like their vote counted, even as a second place vote, it made a difference. And I looked at the Alaska situation with Mary Patolta,
Right.
and she's a Democrat from a normally Republican state, but why did she win the election? Because she got more of the second place votes than either Sarah Palin or her opponent, because they pretty much Begich, right? That's right. And they pretty much tore each other up, Begich and Palin.
Right.
And so Patolta got the Democrat vote, and then because she was seen as less toxic by a lot of the voters, she got a lot of second place votes, and here she is. The representative from Alaska. And I really think there's a lot to be said about that, because our politics has gotten so tribal almost.
Right. And Brad, a lot of times we've had this response about, well, the person I like didn't win, so therefore the system must be a problem. But if you look at the Virginia gubernatorial primary in 2022, the Virginia Republican Party used it for their primary.
Right.
And they ended up nominating Glenn Youngkin as a Republican. And Virginia was a very close election. And because they were able to nominate somebody who had a broad base of support, Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, won that state. So it's not biased between Democrat or Republican. If it has a bias, it's towards the majority of voters.
And I like that part about where I can't just dial in or drill real hard on my base and everybody else can go jump off a cliff. I'm going to have to get some of those people on board, and maybe it will moderate some of the harder edges of my philosophy. Because in the last election, I know several people that voted down ticket but left the presidential part blank, or they wrote in people because they just couldn't handle either Biden or Trump. And now we're looking square in the face in 2024 of another Trump-Biden election, which I think would be catastrophic for this country in both parts. I don't even know what to do. I have a couple of Republicans I am interested in, but Mr. Trump ain't one of them.
Right. And I mean, our sea view for Texas is realistic. You know, you're not going to bite off, you know, the presidential election, but if you can show how it works in local elections, nonpartisan elections, we even have some universities that are using it in their student and faculty elections.
Since 2013.
Right.
A&M. No.
And what it does is it reduces the fear that people have. And when they see it and they do it, they're satisfied with it. In Alaska, 82% of the voters, even though they may not have gotten their candidate, they were satisfied that it was simple and that they want to use it again.
Well, here's the thing. You said maybe taking on the presidential election may be a bit hard to take on right now, but if it's Trump and Biden didn't get there just on their good looks and charm. They got there because of a very flawed primary system. Absolutely. And we do not have the second choice options.
Right.
And
Trump would not have been the nominee in 2016.
No, he would not.
Had there been ranked choice voting.
I'm sorry, we're a statistically low number of voters actually control. It's not the vast majority of the voters in the United States who are controlling that primary. It's the most extreme and statistically the smaller numbers.
Right.
Well, you know, my beloved vast listener base here knows I teach political science at DBU and at Hill, and I talk about all the time when we get to this point in our curriculum how flawed our nomination process is, because we're nominating people that appeal to a very small segment of a very gerrymandered political district, not just congressional district, but all the districts are gerrymandered, and so it's just a very hardcore left, a hardcore right that go to their primaries, and so what we get in November is these two extremes, and we don't feel like we're being represented by either one. And your contention is ranked choice voting would alleviate a good deal of that.
Sure.
How long have you been involved with this?
I've only been actively involved with this since after the November election, because that was my breaking point. I basically said, I'm fed up with this. I got to find something better. And ranked choice voting, see, there were a lot of things I didn't know about it. And one of them is it's a very established, simple way of doing things, and it's being done. We're the only state in the South that doesn't use ranked choice voting for their military and overseas ballots.
Yeah, we were talking about that before, that in some of these southern states here on your brochure you handed me here, the Deep South, primarily with the exception of Florida, they have ranked choice voting options for the military and overseas citizens, but not for the citizens that live in that state.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, let me just describe what happens there is the reason why they did this is because, and Toni can talk to this too, because she lived overseas, is that when you have an election, which is a runoff type election, is that once you get through that first round, you maybe have 4 weeks to get to the runoff. And people in the military overseas, by the time they get the new ballot out and by the time they can get it back, the election's over.
Right.
We're left out.
Right. So they decided to make that change, and it works perfectly well with the rest of the election.
Well, that drives me a little nuts. In Texas, we have, the first Tuesday in March, we have our primaries, and then we have 6 weeks more of garbage to go through for the runoffs, which are even more poorly attended than the original primary. And so you got even more of a dedicated faction that's putting candidates into place.
And how much does a primary cost usually?
Well, I'll tell you what. If we'd had instant runoff or ranked choice voting in the primaries in 2020, we would have saved the taxpayers $6 million.
Texas alone?
Texas alone.
Texas alone. Now that's what you can use that money to improve your elections otherwise.
Yes, and that just. And also, you get the situation where, because we're so gerrymandered again, I'm going to go back to that point, is that, somebody like me, I consider myself a Republican. I consider myself pretty conservative, but I'm not hard right. I would have no chance in this district because I don't appeal to those vocal minorities that go out to go to these primaries. I'm your pretty standard Republican, but I'd get blown out in a primary against somebody that was to my right. And same thing if I were a Democrat, which I am not. Okay, but if I were, I wouldn't have a chance in, say, a district in Dallas, because I'd be hit from too far to the left, and I think that's wrong, and I think that's when we get this horrendous Congress we have now.
And that's why most elections in Texas, smaller ones, are unopposed, because the opposition knows they don't stand a chance, so they don't bother running.
Right.
And you wonder why this hasn't been improved. Since most people feel the way you do, why hasn't this changed? And the answer is because people don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if they knew that this was being used in the South, in Minneapolis, and Maine, and Alaska, in Utah, a number of places in Utah, for many years.
Yes, I could see.
I think they would say, well, wait a minute, maybe we should give this a chance in some of our local nonpartisan elections, maybe some things, just to try it out. It's kind of like that federalist system where, give it a chance in some different places and see how people like it. And if you see you like it, well, maybe we ought to apply that to our districts, our legislative districts, et cetera.
Well, when we're talking about here in Texas in particular, you're asking the politicians to change a system that benefits them.
True enough.
And so, I mean, other than moral persuasion, what can we do to get their attention on this? Because, you're asking Republicans are perfectly content with how things have been going in Texas the last 30 years.
Right.
And so do you have to go through them to make these changes? Why would they do it?
Sure. Well, clearly, in Texas, a lot of the districts, because they're gerrymandered, the Republican primary becomes very, very important. And so I think in the Republican Party primary, you can ask your candidates a very simple question. You show up at a town hall or whatever and you say, do you support the idea of trying ranked choice voting? And I will tell you that I will make a bet to you that the candidate that says, yeah, I'm open to letting us try ranked choice voting some places, that's probably the one that's going to be the more moderate and probably is going to reflect the will of the majority in the district.
Well, I don't have a particular problem with Roger Williams here in our District 25. To me, he's kind of unknown in the Congress. But, does he reflect the entirety of the district? And how do we know, really? Because of the low percentage of turnouts,
yes,
and the skewing of the two candidates, either that run for this district, Democrat or Republican, are going to skew to the extremes. And I've read over and over again by smarter people than I in political writings that said if we don't change this primary system pretty soon, it's just going to get worse and worse. And you look at what's going on with the deficit discussions, debts, all that. If we had more moderate people, probably this would not have been to this point. But now you got the left and the right in this conversation absolutely unwilling to budge an inch, and we're just heading towards this potential problem here.
Now, Brad, see if you can imagine a local election where Roger Williams says, that other guy that's running against me in the Republican Party, he's not such a bad guy. And there's a few things that, we disagree with, but, mostly he's not a bad guy. Maybe he gets some of those second point votes.
Right. You'd be a lot less willing or maybe there'd be a higher price to pay for bomb throwing and name calling.
Right.
Because the people said, geez, I'm not giving him my second place vote because I don't want this guy around. I mean, he's going to cause all this trouble.
Right. I mean, why do nobody likes negative campaigning. Nobody likes negative ads. So why do they keep using them? Because it works.
It does.
Every single time under the system we have. We change the system, we flip the script.
Well, and I get really kind of worn out when a Republican or a Democrat says something not even complimentary, just not mean about the other party, and they get hammered by their own side.
But it make news.
Yeah. So if I remember when Oklahoma senator said something, well, Nancy Pelosi isn't that bad, and they were going to impeach him, or something like that, to throw him out of office because he said he didn't rant and rave about how Nancy Pelosi was Satan in a skirt, but he just said, oh, she's not that bad to deal with, and he got hammered, and it's like, good heavens, just decent courtesy at least should be seen for what it is.
Right. It changes, RCV changes the us versus them dynamic. I mean, you can tell, basically if you just do it mathematically, right? It's a lot harder. The problem is not that voters don't understand it. The problem is that politicians don't understand it. it makes it much more difficult for them to game the system
Well,
and to attack somebody if you have basically the options, more options, increase the possibilities by a factorial.
Well, maybe they do understand it better than you think because they see how it's going to not benefit them. They say, well, I might have to actually work for my seat instead of talking to the same 15 people. I'm going to have to actually talk to the others. Right. Oh Lord, no.
Right. If you're
Moderates.
a Republican, if you're Republican, ask your candidates, how come this is okay for the Virginia primary, but we can't use it in Texas?
Well, it kind of brings up another point. Were you in Texas in 2006?
Yeah. No.
Okay. Well, 2006 we had a Republican primary. Rick Perry was the governor.
Sure, I remember that.
And he had a couple other Republican candidates running against the one I really liked. Carol Strayhorn was her name.
Oh, I remember.
Okay, Carol Strayhorn lost the primary, obviously, but she still wanted to get on the ticket as a third party or at least another candidate. And you had to get about 45,000 signatures, and all those signatures could not be. They had to be from people that did not vote in the Republican primary
Now
or
it's
Democrat
82,000.
primary. 82,000.
Yep.
And so if you had voted in the primary for, say, Carol Strayhorn, you couldn't sign her petition to get her on the ballot. And I knew that because I teach Texas government, because I'm a dork. Who knows that besides me, right? And so I didn't vote in that primary so I could sign her petition, which I did. Now, if we had ranked choice voting, Rick Perry would have had a real problem getting reelected because Strayhorn is pretty popular, but she was underfinanced and whatever else. And so when I was doing my research for the show, that came to mind. Is like the all or nothing kind of first past the post voting, which we make it very impossible to make these choices, particularly for third parties, which we're going to segue into the Ford party and whatnot. It makes it almost impossible for them to thrive.
Right. I mean, what ranked choice voting does is it gives everybody, most people are satisfied. It may not be over the moon about the winner, but they're satisfied with the election. And let me ask you, when was the last time you were over the moon about a winner of an election?
Ronald Reagan.
Okay. You see, I
He
also
didn't
wrote,
even have to
I
think.
voted for Ronald Reagan as well.
I'm not really joking.
That was my Republican Party, for sure.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan. I didn't have any problem voting for Romney or for W. Bush but as far as sprinting to the ballot box and all that, no, not quite. But I just remember.
That was so long ago.
I know.
That's what's sad.
I had little problem with Romney, little problem with McCain, very little of each. I mean, they're fine. But Trump and Clinton and Biden, it's like surely in a country this size we could do better than this. But the way the system is set up, this is what we're getting.
Right.
And it's that fourth choice on the ice cream chart that's what we've been getting.
That's right. And I will tell you, I've been thinking about this, and the fact is that, there's all sorts of very important financial reasons why. I wonder, why does the politician who's only getting 5% of the vote in these primaries, why don't they just drop out? And the answer is because it's financial.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's an issue financially. So, this is not going to change unless we change the system.
Well, not only that, but you're going to see in the Republican primaries in particular, people that should be out pretty soon, but they're trying to get a cabinet spot or set themselves up for a book tour or maybe talk show on Fox or whatever. And so they have other reasons to stay in the race and actually winning it. And that's one reason why Trump got nominated in 2016 is because all the other Republicans, the quote normal ones, kept knocking each other off, and he just kept with that steady core of followers, and he won. And there you go. So I want to take a segue here and talk about what's going on this weekend, and then we're going to talk about with Toni the Ford party, and which y'all endorse ranked choice voting very much. So
we support it.
Taylor, did you get those maps and such? Yes, I got these from Mary Slaney, the world famous Queen of Burleson, Mary Slaney. We have a lot going on this weekend. It's going to start Friday evening and go Saturday and Sunday, and it's going to be the Honey Tour. It's not a bike race; it's a bike event, of various distances and whatnot. And they've been doing this for a while. But Gabrina Daniels and Jessica Pounds over at the Chamber of Commerce have done a fantastic job of making this not just a bike event, but a overall community event. it isn't just for the bikers; it's for everybody. We're gonna have carnivals, we're gonna have music, and we have all sorts of events. I think there's another slide talks about well, here's the map, and you can see you can't see it obviously on Apple and Spotify, but there's a map, okay, and it's where a lot of our events are down in the Mayor Vera Calvin Plaza, and they got carnival rides, and they have vendors and get food trucks, and they're going to have all sorts of things. They're going to have a shuttle service from the high school, the Burleson Collegiate High School. So if you don't have the park and you can park over at the Collegiate High School, which is the old Kerr, which is the old high school, which is old timers remembered in various different forms, and they'll have a shuttle, and also First Baptist is going to be helping out with their park, and it's going to be a lot of people there. And so it's going to be great. And I think the next slide is the venue. Let's see, some of the music we have on the Plaza stage. Austin Seals and Hot Summer Night kickoff will be there. Dalton Taurus will be there. Limelight. Gosh, look at all these different ones. Brock DeWald, whom is well known around here, is going to be part of this as well. He's going to be on 7:00 on May 27th. So and Brock is I have his album actually. He came on the show about a year ago, April, with his new album. It's good country music. All these, so you have all this going on, and so check it out. It's going to be from 2 to 11 Saturday and Sunday, and 5 to 10 on Thursday. Maybe you can go there with your brochures and hand it out.
So many good choices. I wonder how I'm going to decide.
Right choice. Oh, that's very good. Well done. You just write them down, and then there you go. Okay. Did you get that logo to Taylor for the Ford Party? Here you go. So tell us about the Ford Party.
And if I might mention something about ranked choice, are you smarter than a fifth grader? I have to say that. Back when I taught fifth grade and we were making big classroom decisions, we would make a list, and then instead of just voting, this between one or two, they would rank their choices. So if it didn't quite sound when you were listening to the podcast and not able to see, if it was something that would be easy to do, a fifth grader can do it. That was how we made decisions. And the Forward Party, the Forward Party of Texas is working to be an alternative to the duopoly, to the two choices that are currently available. In answer to the complaints you said earlier, we are Andrew Yang, who didn't win the Democratic primary back in 2020. He started his own party, the Forward Party. He left the Democratic Party. And then it joined with two organizations that were predominantly from a Republican base. And they came together and formed the Forward Party, and we are the Texas Forward Party.
Now, when you talk about third parties, we've talked about this already, how difficult it is to break through that two-party domination, which, again, is another topic I talk about in my classes about, are there any benefits of two parties? Well, a little, but it also keeps the third parties from coming, and it gives you, you're going to get A or B. You're not going to get all the other a la carte type policies. One of the concerns people have about something like Forward Party would be, are they liberal or are they conservative? That kind of stuff. You when we were talking earlier, you really characterized it as neither.
Yes, we are not, and yet we are. We are the people who are supporting the Forward Party. Unlike the duopoly, where everything is set at the top, and then you have to do lockstep down, and you can't say something nice about Nancy Pelosi or George Bush. I mean, you can't.
Right.
You have to follow that lockstep down. The Forward Party believes that you can get people with diverse opinions and bring them together, and they can come up with the consensus of what will work best in their communities, in their states.
So you're telling me that Forward Party of Texas may have a different platform than, say, the Forward Party of California?
Yes.
Even if they're opposed 180 degrees on something?
As long as it follows the basic values of the Forward Party.
And what are those basic values?
Those basic values of the National Party are election reform, ranked choice voting, effective voter districting, getting rid of gerrymandering, open primaries, which of course benefit third parties, but those are one of our bigs. The other is community, doing what is right for communities, making decisions by consensus and working together, good communication and working for these communities, and that's basically it.
Well, it sounds like, back in the day, Republicans were more fond of local control. Not anymore. I mean, you see
No,
what's coming out
not
of the
at all.
legislature now.
See what's coming out of the legislature.
Right. Yeah, I was talking with Victoria Johnson about this, and she's like, my gosh, if this really does come to pass, a lot of decisions will be taken over our hands, and you would reverse that in the Ford Party.
Yes, because we believe it's the community that knows what's best for them. And that's why California may have something entirely different. Talking about immigration, and that's a priority, of course, for the Forward Party of Texas. We live in Texas. But how we may want to address it isn't the same as New York, who have people coming in from Canada. I lived up there, and you do have people come. It is a totally different animal. So you can't make decisions based on a whole country. Sometimes you need to make decisions based on what works in your community.
Well, would you have a national candidate and platform, stuff of that nature, or is it more?
Right now, we're not interested in that. We are interested in working locally. We were talking before the show that the majority of elections in Texas, small elections, local elections, are unopposed because people can't run other candidates without a fair voting system. And we're more interested in working in these smaller elections here in Texas and talking to communities than national. And that's true for the whole national organization. Their focus is in on states. We are not interested in running anyone in 2024.
So really, it's not so much you're putting out a slate of candidates as such. It's here's our people, vote for them. It's like, here's our program, our platform, and we want you to adopt it, and
that's exactly it.
So it's a... You see that any progress of that happening in Texas? Texas is a really hard state to do things like this in. They're not third-party friendly at all.
No, not at all. There are states where you just pay a filing fee and fill out the form, and you're on the ballot. In Texas, it's going to take 82,000 votes. It's going to take education. It's going to take people knowing they can't vote in the primary.
Right.
It's going to take probably $2 to $3 million to get that done here in Texas.
Wow, where'd you get that? I mean,
we haven't. Yeah. We're working on that now. That's
Andrew Yang may have to cough up some money.
He already has. Trust me. Yeah. In fact, Andrew Yang and Christine Todd Whitman,
right, used to be governor of New Jersey,
right, and she a Republican,
right.
She and Andrew will be coming to Texas. Well, she has already been in Texas a few times, but they'll be coming here in June. Yeah, in June.
I got to make that one.
When you say coming, we say here in Texas, where exactly?
They're going to be in the Metroplex in Dallas. They're going to be in Austin, and they're going to be in Houston. Well, they're going to do a little whirlwind tour in June.
Well, when they come around, you need to send us some information. We'll throw it on the screen or something.
We will,
because it's I teach about third parties, and most third parties are ideological, but yours is not.
It's practical, and it's a different paradigm. It is a whole different paradigm. And when you talk to someone, they say, yes, but what do you believe? And it always kind of I make a little face because I think, please understand this. But we believe in individuals. We believe in communities. And so it's a different paradigm.
Well, what it sounds like, if I may rephrase it in a way that you're looking for, an attitude of change and reform, and the details are to be worked out amongst the people that have that attitude.
Right.
Okay, as opposed to coming in there.
That's really good.
Okay.
Do you want to join?
Yeah. Well, I already know that I will not, Mr. Biden or Mr. Trump will not be getting my vote, and that kind of angers a lot of people because they say, you're throwing away your vote. And this is my point with a lot of them. I'm not throwing away my vote. I disagree. I have debates with some family members. You're throwing away your vote. Not voting for this guy is in effect voting for that guy. No, it isn't.
See, and I've been voting for almost 50 years, and there have been times that I've been faced by a ballot, and I've thought, this guy, I believe most of all in this person. He speaks most of my mind. This one's more likely to win, and I don't like this guy. So I vote for this one. Whereas with ranked choice, I could vote for my number one and then give my number two to the one I think will win.
Right.
And so that's...
Well, if you think about it, if she votes for her number one, who doesn't get it this time, but maybe gets a number of votes.
Maybe he's somebody else's.
Maybe sets him up for the next or her
Right.
for the next election. Yeah.
Well, there is a candidate that declared last week that I am very, very interested in supporting, Tim Scott out of South Carolina, a traditional Republican, but he also has a great story, and he doesn't have all that other crap that goes with what you give Donald Trump. But the chances of him winning the nomination are slight. No, it didn't matter how good a quality he is as a person or senator. He's got a huge hill to climb, and I'd like for have a system in which he could make traction. Now, you talk about ranked choice voting. I know of other states that do it. I know Iowa caucuses run like that at the Democrat side anyway. Because if you don't, they have a weird deal where you go into the room and they go to different areas of the room.
I don't know if I could caucus.
Iowa is not really my choice for an example. With ranked choice voting, when you're not doing a primary, the machines that we already have can handle ranked choice voting already.
Sure.
And so this is not a long drawn-out process. This is very simple.
Well, also the fact is that we're more familiar with ranked choice voting than we realize. I mean, every time the baseball or football or whatever does most valuable player, it's based on a ranked choice like that. It isn't, I can only vote for one player. They vote for like the top three. Heisman Trophy is done that way. And so just about any kind of award in sports is done on ranked choice voting. And you mentioned earlier the Oscars are done that way. And so this is, as much as like baseball, if they can do it, we should be able to do it at politics,
I think I'm going to use that. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Let's get a fifth grader and get someone else in and have them do it and see what they can figure out.
Well, it bothers me a lot. When I was driving up here, I was talking to my cousin, and I was talking about what we were talking about, and he had some opinions about it. He would like to see it as well. Now he liked to see it work in his state of Oklahoma to see if it really would work, but. He had I wouldn't say concerns, but he had questions.
Of course.
And all that. But, I really do believe that if this was given a better chance, I think people would like to hear about it. Now, as far as the Ford Party, do you have a headquarters here in Texas?
We don't have a headquarters. We do have a headquarters in Washington, D.C. That's our national. We do not have a state headquarters. We cannot put money into things like that right now.
Yeah, well,
we have an executive committee and a nation builder of about 10,000 supporters. So we are slowly getting out there.
How did you get connected with Ford Party?
Through my libertarian son, actually. He was talking to me. He said, I listened to a podcast I really liked, Andrew Yang. And I thought, I remembered him from the Democratic primaries because he had hats that said math on it. And I was a math teacher. And it was Make America Think Again, or Think Harder. Make America Think Harder. And so I thought, I'll listen to his podcast. And then he began talking about this party. And I sort of went into it that way through my son.
And a lot of people think that third parties may be a nice intellectual exercise, but they really don't have impact.
They're hard work.
They're hard work, but they should understand the Republican Party was the third party.
Yes.
And so, and the third parties have had impacts on our elections. I talk about 1912. I talked about 1992.
Right.
So third parties do make a difference.
But think about the majority of the American public. I mean, just the majority of American voters are not hard right and hard left. They are the people in the middle trying to pay their bills, survive, keep a mortgage, keep their children happy. They are right there in that area, and they can talk to each other. And they look at the TV and say, "My gosh, avert that! You can do it if you would only." That's us. And so, though you say a third party is a tough going, we're appealing to those people in the middle to talk to each other.
Well, and that's true, and I think. When you see people in the national spotlight, the national government trashing each other so hard, it trickles down to the local elections as well. And we've seen that.
Yep.
And it state and local, community elections. It's almost like, well, if the big boys are going to do it, then I can do it too.
And it breaks your heart.
It does, and it tears up communities and it destroys relationships, and makes Thanksgiving awfully uncomfortable. Sometimes when you get together. But the thing about it is, if they saw a more appropriately behaving Congress with decorum and respect, I think that would trickle down as well.
And when I moved to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When I moved to Texas, I went, it was the first local election, and I asked someone, and I don't even remember who it was now, who was a board trustee. I said, you don't have Democrats and Republicans running in these elections. And she said, no, we don't, because in Texas, we believe we represent everyone in the community. And I have remembered that since, and I thought, how cool, because it wasn't that way.
Well, it's happened also is that by statute, school board elections and municipal elections are supposed to be nonpartisan.
They're supposed to be.
But they more and more in certain areas of the state, particularly on the Republican side, have crept into it. We've had Republican statewide office holders and candidates come in and intervene in themselves into local elections, and endorse people for local elections. And I'm not just talking about Burleson, happened in Fort Worth, happened in Dallas, it happens in Houston, but that's not supposed to happen, and so that's a real problem. As far as like having a third option, that's a viable third option, it will change the minds. Nothing changes the minds of a politician more than votes. Persuasion and tears and whatnot may be really nice, but not nearly as effective as the voice of the voter. And if they see, and this is exactly what happened. I teach this in my class as well. This is what happened to the Democratic Party about 130 years ago. They saw the Populist Party taking away all their votes, and they said, okay, we're populist too, and it changed the character of the Democratic Party. And now, we have the situation where the Democrats and Republicans at the national and some state levels are so polarizing that most people now say, I'm neither one.
Yes.
I think the climate
more independence than ever.
And most independents still maybe lean one way or the other, but I think that the climate is there for you to have a viable third party, or multiple parties.
And that would be great. I mean, it doesn't. It can be independent. It can be libertarian. It can be other parties other than Forward. But we're going to have ranked choice voting really for it to work, and decent voting districts.
Well, representative voting districts, because you look at some of these gerrymandered.
The current ones are indecent. So I said decent on purpose.
Okay. All right.
I knew what I was saying.
Indecent.
They're indecent.
Well, you look at how some of these, particularly urban districts, are so gerrymandered. It just defies the imagination. And I'll throw up some of these districts on the wall on the screen. And the kids are like, that's just bizarre how it looks. These weird districts, and the urban areas are the worst, because you'll be like, this side of the street is one, this side of the street is the other, and then it flip flops, and and you're like, you don't even know which district you're in, and so that the tailoring of those districts to such a minute degree has led in a lot of ways to really crappy primaries, which has led to a really crappy Congress. And the legislature, state of Texas, I'm disappointed in them, because they are passing laws and bills that 20 years ago they wouldn't even have thought about doing, in terms of taking away local control. They you and I both know how much they got involved in schools.
Yes.
Tremendously. When did you leave the district, by the way?
2017.
Okay, and I was 2016, and you and I both know just how much state emphasis was placed on tests or mediation and whatnot. It's Mr. Jeff Blankenship, I believe. Ours in gerrymandered.
Oh.
We are in a district that has West Austin in it. It goes down 281, and so we, West Austin and it goes through like Hamilton and Lampasas and all that, and you look at some of these in Dallas and Houston in particular. Houston's worse. It just is ridiculous, and I wish the Supreme Court had stepped in, but they basically said about 4 years ago, we're tired of doing these cases. We're not doing them anymore. It's y'all's problem at the state level. And when your states are run by one party, it's going to be addressed the way that party wants.
And both parties do it. It's not just one. I mean, here in Texas, we talk Republican have done it, but both parties do it across the United States. It just depends on which state you're in.
Let's talk about your hometown, state of Illinois.
Absolutely. Illinois is the mirror image, and they're very heavily gerrymandered. I'm sorry. Illinois is a mirror image, and they're very heavily gerrymandered. But, when I think about gerrymandering, the basic premise of that is that the politicians think they know, and they're probably right most of the time, who you are going to vote for. So if you want to defeat gerrymandering, at least initially, Well, then what you have to do is confound their models. Don't vote for who they think you're going to vote for, and you'll be surprised at how fast the gerrymandering changes. I have a question for you, man.
Sure.
Maybe you'll know because you teach this class.
Hope so.
The districts, districting is based on a decennial 10-year census.
Right.
But is there any rules as far as, well, we don't have to stay with the same map for 10 years. If we vote people in that are interested in fair districts, well, they could make a change.
It's a hard constitutional question because in the Constitution, it very directly says that these districts are going to be based on population as determined by that census that's taken. So I could very easily see a judge or a Supreme Court saying, no, you're going to have to wait every 10 years unless you have some sort of
If you base it on the same data, but you're just changing your approach.
Well, you could do that, but it's almost impossible. Now, if you use the same data and said, okay, in about 2025, we're going to change the districts up again, you're asking the party in power to take that kind of risk, and they're not going to do it.
Right.
And it could be argued that you're using old data.
Yeah, and it doesn't reflect the people who have moved into the Austin area in the last 4 years and that kind of thing. So I could see a court saying, no, it's going to have to be at the 10-year mark. Now, I do remember back in 2000, we had the census, and we had a split legislature in Austin, and they couldn't agree on proper districting. And so they had a judge impose one. And then when the Republicans took over in 2002, they because it was judge imposed, not legislature imposed, they could change it. And they tried to change it. The Democrats walked out on them, kind of like they did about 2 years ago. And after all the hair pulling is over, they finally got the districts they wanted for 2024. And they targeted 6 Democrats in the House, and 5 survived, or got killed, rather. Not literally. Poor choice of words. But they got wiped out in the elections. All right. But 5 of the 6 lost. The only one that survived was the one Burleson had at the time, named Chet Edwards. And then in 2010, he got swept out with the Obama tide. So, it's kind of unfortunate because, Chet was a Democrat, but he was hardly, what you call a left-winger at all. But that's kind of a short history lesson. But so it'd be very, very unlikely a court's going to approve a change like that in middle of a decade, unless you had a situation like I just described. Because they've changed districts before the 10 years up because of some sort of judge mandate that this district is unconstitutional, this one is discriminatory, and they had to change it for the next election. So they're not written in stone by the hand of God, but they are pert near. So there you go. Well, we're running close on time, but I'll let y'all have the last word about what y'all want to have people to know when they listen to this or see it later. Which one wants to go first?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Sure, no problem.
And I'd be happy to lots more to talk about with this. And I want everybody to take a look at rcvfortexas.org, and they'll find out more about our ranked choice voting. And
they've got a great video. It's less than 3 minutes long, and it just plays it out for you, and you go, oh, I get it.
Well, I bet between now and November, I bet we could find a time for you to come back. And
be happy to.
And then you can show the video and whatnot.
Okay.
You have a video to bring too?
I'll bring a video. Actually, I do have a video.
Right. Well, let's do this again closer to election time or primary time prior to that. Not November 24, but let's do this before the next set of primaries, and we could see maybe just more clearly just the problems you describe. We talk about candidates and whatnot. I was thinking about the last Republican primary. I got to say it. I'm sorry, Vass, listening on this. There's no business Ken Paxton should be our Attorney General, but because of the system that he has, he is. So we have this guy that's been under indictment all this time is our Attorney General, and it's astounding. If he had a ranked choice voting, he'd probably be facing court time.
See, Texas used to laugh at Louisiana because we had Edwin Edwards who'd actually gone to jail, and yet he got elected.
Well,
who's laughing now?
Who's laughing now? We ain't laughing. Well,
TexasForwardParty.org. I'm just going to toss out our
TexasForwardParty.org. So y'all check it out. I'll be checking it out later because I like this kind of stuff. Of course, I need a life. Anyway, but thank y'all very much. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you, Taylor, for your technical wizardry as always. And Tomorrow, I had a group coming on talk about adolescent issues and their therapy forum, but they texted me this morning and said they had a conflict that come up, and so I'm really not sure what I'm doing tomorrow. If I'm by myself, I'm going to talk about the deficit issues. If I have a guest, we'll talk about what's the guest talking about. So just hang loose. We'll see tomorrow. And on Thursday, I'm going to be showing the video clips of the businesses I've been visiting. I've gotten 3 so far, and I got 5 more to go. There's still a couple of spots left if you have an idea that you'd like to be on it. So we'll see y'all tomorrow, one way or the other.
Thanks a lot.